Well, welcome to the Botanical Medicine Study course with me, your host and instructor, Stephanie Georgiev. It's April, that lovely month in the Northern Hemisphere when, for the most part, winter is finally over and spring is in full bloom. It's time for gardens, which also means it's time for the natural world to start growing, often as volunteers or what some would call weeds. So, for the next few episodes, we are going to explore some common weeds that are actually quite healing, nutritious, and ultimately good for the garden in many ways. So, for this week, we will be exploring the very healing, tasty, but also a plant that requires a bit of caution, especially if you're going to pick it, and that is stinging nettles. Now, stinging nettles is the Latin binomial for this plant is called Urtica dioica. And this is often known as the common nettle. It's also known as the burn nettle or stinging nettle, and or just nettle. And this is an herbaceous perennial flowering plant in the family of Urticaceae, which is sort of redundant here. It's basically the nettle family, and it also is a flowering plant. And the family name comes from the genus Urtica. Now, this plant, it was originally native to Europe and much of temperate Asia and Western North Africa, but it's now found worldwide. This plant is happy in all sorts of soils, but it usually prefers moist soils and it likes to grow next to where humans live and work. The leaves are heart-shaped. They're finely toothed, as you can see, and they taper to a point. Nettles also have green flowers in long branched clusters, which spring out from the leaves. There are several species of this. For those of you who are used to homeopathy, you know there's Urtica urens, which is a type of nettles, but the one we're going to be looking at is dioica. And the signature structure of this plant is there are many hollow stinging hairs, and these hairs are called trichomes, and they're on the leaves and the stems. And what's interesting is they actually act like needles, and they inject histamine and other chemicals that produce that stinging sensation, and that's why the plant has this name. A side note, according to Mrs. Grieve, who wrote that famous Modern Herbal, quote, the sting of a nettle may also be cured by rubbing the part with rosemary, mint, or sage leaves, unquote. So I think this herbal hack may come in handy at some point, especially if you have a lot of nettle volunteers in your herb garden. Now, the nettle flowers from June to September in the Northern Hemisphere and sometimes you can grow up to 2 to 3 feet tall. The roots are perennial and they creep. And so this plant multiplies quickly. And it means that when it comes to volunteer in your garden, you make friends because it's going to be there for a while. Now, we do know that nettles has been in use since the time of the Egyptians. And there are medicinal actions, all sorts of them. Uh, it's mostly used for its diuretic properties, which means it helps with urination. It also has very powerful anti-inflammatory properties. Basically, can be used topically, and this is not for the faint of heart, and I'm not suggesting this, but in ages past, people would actually rub stinging nettles on red, swollen joints, arthritic joints, And in the spirit of like cures like, it actually helps relieve the pain. Now, nettles is a wonderful thing for a spring tonic. It's really good for both the kidneys and the liver, so it has alterative and tonic properties. And in some traditions, it's also used as an anti-asthmatic, and it helps to prevent seasonal allergies. Stinging nettles and roots are both used, but they're used differently. And the leaf has more of the anti-inflammatory, pain relieving, and diuretic properties, where the root is actually used to alleviate benign prostatic hyperplasia. There are all sorts of articles in the medical literature on this, and you'll see in some of the over-the-counter formulas for enlarged prostate, you'll see the root in the remedy. And now, nettles is super nutritious. It just is so good for you. In fact, a lot of cuisines have nettles in them in terms of soups. I can tell you in what's now North Macedonia, people collect these and they dry them and they use them in the winter as you and I would make things out of spinach. And they're so good for you. They're high in chlorophyll, they're high in protein, they're high in vitamins and minerals. And so nutritious are they that they've actually been used as fodder for animals and sometimes in fish food because of the high nutritional content. There's lots of vitamin C, vitamin A, and it's really amazing. 13% of the dry mass of nettles is protein. So this is just a really, really nutritional plant that is just really good for you. Now, in biodynamic agriculture, nettle is used as a key ingredient in the 504 preparation. And this is a compost preparation that enriches soil health and plant nutrition. It's usually used, they'll put all sorts of different biodynamic preparations in a big compost pile, stir it up, and then use the topsoil, and this in topsoil. And what this does, the nettle is harvested and buried in a clay plot for a year, and this transforms into a dark material, which is then added to the compost. And it's very rich in iron, so it's just really good for your garden. So not only is this not a weed, it's actually a wonderful soil amendment. In other type of garden practices, they make a nettle tea, which is used to enhance compost or just sprayed directly on plants. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing to add to your gardening practices. Now, there are so many ways to take nettle. I personally, just because of who I am, I think, incorporating nettles into your diet is a wonderful way to do that. And you can also take it as a tea. You can put the fresh nettle leaves in boiling hot water, which is how you should do that because it'll kind of annihilate those little stinging nettles. You'll get the good stuff without the sting. You can eat them. Obviously, salad is not a good idea, but you can eat them in soups, etc. We'll talk about that in a little bit. You can take it in tincture form. You can get the leaf in capsule form, which is usually powdered dried leaf. And also you can take the root, which is powdered dried root. So there's no lack of ways that you can take this amazing plant. Now, cooking with nettles is quite delicious. Like I said, there's just, you basically can use it any way you would use a green, to be perfectly honest with you. The trick is, if you're going to pick them, you need to pick them with a thick garden gloves, and you need to either dry them You can put them in a food dryer or hang them up and let them dry air naturally. Or you need to put them in boiling hot water just to take away the sting. And you can make quiches and frittatas, soups, stir fries. Um, I've seen things like ravioli with stinging nettle, obviously cooked. You don't want to have just raw stinging nettle in your ravioli. But there's all kinds of ways that you can use this incredible plant. And I've got a link in the program notes, as per usual, on some really fun recipes for this incredibly nutritious plant. Now, growing nettles, if you're like me, they just kind of pop up in my garden. They're also everywhere. Like, there's a forest behind where I used to live, and they were everywhere. And like I said, the nettles tend to really like humans. And so they tend to grow next to buildings. If when I was on a farm, they grew next to the barn. Uh, Nettles just really like people, so they grow next to people. And it's best if you want to grow them, you can grow them in containers. You can grow them in your garden from seeds. You can grow them in, like I said, in containers, in pots. Any way you can think of, you can certainly grow these. You can also wild harvest them. But the what is true is that they want moist soil and partial shade, and you can grow the seeds in spring, or you can start the seedlings and then transplant in the spring. So I do have a link in the program notes if you're very interested in growing this incredible plant. So this is Stephanie Georgiev saying thank you so much for spending your valuable time with me. Starting in May of 2025, be the 2-year anniversary of starting this wonderful channel. And I also am going to start diversifying content. So we will not be having herb of the week, we'll be having herb of the month, and we'll have other types of content available on the channel. I will continue herb of the month on the Patreon page. So for less than you spend on one latte per month, you can continue to get herb of the week on Patreon. And we'll be exploring a little bit more exotic herbs, more traditional Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic, Native American, Arabic, rainforest herbs, all sorts of things. So if you're wanting that kind of content, you can go to the link in the program notes on how to sign up. And for a mere $5 a month, which is less than lattes are these days, you're going to get 4 amazing weeks of content that way. So this is Stephanie Georgia saying thank you again for spending your valuable time with me. And until next time, be well.